Bits and Bones, I'm Slady V, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a movie review for Shirley. Now, I don't know if YouTube's algorithm is just kind of being whack right now, or being a movie reviewer has just suddenly died, which I highly doubt. We all want to give our 2 cents on literally anything and everything nowadays. It's the digital age, of course. But when I look up the movie title Shirley and the word review, first and foremost, I get just movie trailers. And then just a couple of movie reviews from reviewers that I've never heard of before myself. So I found that a little odd, and that's not why necessarily I decided to make this review, but I hope that if you're out there and you're looking for a Shirley movie review, that this finds you and hopefully helps you out a little bit, because I wanted to know more about it and I was completely out in the dark and there was no help for me to be had, because that's not the usual experience. I also added explained in the description and stuff like that, and I got more obscure reviewers, but like none of the big people were reviewing Shirley, which is really quite odd. One of the reviewers I found had a microphone so bad that I couldn't understand him, and another was entirely an AI voice and weird border animations around scenes that they're talking about. Like, I'm a little weirded out. I don't know if Shirley is like off limits, but I gave up without finding what I was looking for, which was good, I guess, in general, on trying to find what I was looking for, which was just a good general view of the movie with a bit about its interpretation and its meaning, perhaps, but that's what I'm here to provide now. Lucky you! Now, I didn't think I had a lot to say about Shirley, but on my stumbling around YouTube trying to find other reviewers doing reviews for it, I ran across a reviewer that said, and I quote, "I think it's mixed messages throughout the movie. I'm not totally sure by the end what it's trying to say, or that it's saying anything at all." And they said that specifically the movie was about, oh, Shirley Jackson is twisted. So, now I'm here to argue against this stupid man. Shirley is a historical fiction drama about the famous writer Shirley Jackson. She is best known for her story, The Lottery, and once I heard Rosie describing the story on the train in the opening of the movie, I was instantly able to identify it before I knew what the movie was actually about Shirley Jackson. I thought it was just called Shirley. I didn't know anything about it because I couldn't find any reviews about it. So yeah, I figured out that it was about Shirley Jackson before they even said the name Shirley Jackson in the film, which just goes to show how iconic she is. More commonly, I think people know her now by her novel The Haunting of Hill House, which has been turned into a Netflix adaptation, which is pretty dang good, and which I also did a review for. Very short one in my other videos if you want to go check it out. So I went into the movie pretty blind, and it was way more of a thriller than a horror as I expected, kind of from the vibes of the trailer. So here is a non-spoiler summary of Shirley. Shirley and her husband, Stanley, a critic and English professor, take a young couple into their house. The young husband, Fred, becomes an understudy of Stanley's at the university, and Rosie, the young wife, becomes a sort of housekeeper. Unofficially, but like, you know, you're living somewhere, you want to help out. Rosie also becomes what you might call Shirley's literary accomplice, supporting her, doing errands for her, and generally caring for Shirley's messy mentality. But as Shirley gets farther into the writing of her novel, and honestly, I don't know which novel they're probably referencing because I haven't read a whole bunch of her work in the like straight historical sense of the figure, things start to take darker turns. If that sounds interesting to you, I definitely do recommend watching Shirley. Shirley is a unique movie. You never know exactly where it's going. The directing is just splendid, which is a plus on top of the entirely convicted acting. There is only one thing that I think may hold people back from enjoying the movie, which I'm about to go into right now. So, spoilers. I've only watched Shirley once, and I will watch it again, but as things stand, this is what I interpreted from the movie. To start, it's not a single factual narrative. A lot of the directing is blurred and suggestive. There are plot points that you can interpret and can't entirely know. The main mystery being the fate of a girl that went missing from her husband's campus and whom Shirley is determined to write a novel about. If you're someone that likes figuring things out ahead of time, this movie is a roller coaster of misleading expectations. And I'm that person. I usually have a couple endings that I predict, and one is right by the end. I was all over the place with Shirley. Because its tone is cynical, oppressive, and a little crazy. It kept giving me the new tiny little bits of characters that could come into something huge, but then gives you another, and then another. And it's like, oh, these people are much more complicated than I was prepared to dissect. Is the story Shirley's writing really about the missing girl? Or is it about Rosie? Or is it about herself? Is Shirley's husband a scandalous man that had an affair with that girl and then killed her? Did Shirley do it after she found out? Or was it a crime of passion? Did she just disappear and it's completely unrelated by chance? Did Shirley relate to her? Did Shirley love her? Did she even know her? Or are the images that we get of them together and her sexual interest in Rosie just a distraction and bit of wild imaginative indulgence? Who fucking knows? It's great. I'm going to skip the obvious controversy about whether I think Shirley really cared about Rosie or it was just some giant manipulation, because it can be both, and I believe that it was both. Instead, let's just skip to the ending. All those earlier questions about the narrative aside, let's get into what I think the aforementioned critic that I brought up beforehand terribly missed, and why. Shirley is the tragic tale of a woman. It's not about Shirley, or Rosie, or the missing girl. It's about all of them. It's about intelligent, caring women being undermined and used by men in their lives and what that does to them. I didn't take the ending by its baseline, which is that Shirley manipulated Rosie to the point of suicide to get the story that she wanted to write. I saw the whole movie as genuinely moving Rosie closer to Shirley's mindset, as Shirley continues to spiral and grow isolated by her husband's need for social dominance, which you can very clearly see in his opposition of the younger male in the picture as well. As Rosie and we, the audience, grow closer to Shirley and sympathize with her, it becomes increasingly obvious that her need to fill the role of a standoffish female writer in a time that praises and simultaneously ostracizes them is bullshit. It's the only space that Shirley is allowed to occupy as a successful female writer. She can choose to do very few things, like define herself through social interactions at parties, write whatever she wants without criticism, escape a marriage filled with infidelity and negging. She can play the role that her husband gives her of a cynical, well-renowned author, or kill herself, like the last scene with her and Rosie standing on the cliff suggests. Rosie walks away from that ledge changed, and closer to that embittered role of woman that Shirley has already occupied for a long time. And, you know, anybody would be pretty fucking bitter about it by that point. Rosie comes to fully process and accept her position in the patriarchy, which is to have a scandalous husband, stay at home, and have babies, and just deal with it. I love the moment that Rosie is driving away with her husband to somewhere new, and when he mentions that she just needs a bit of rest so that things can go back to normal. And Rosie, all strange with an angry passion inside, says, no, I'm not going back to that. Little wifey, little Rosie, that was madness. At that moment, I actually raised my fist in the air as a show of solidarity, mostly to piss my boyfriend off, because he didn't quite get all of the feels, but they were there. I was like, yes, bitter bitches. And then I think a lot of people got caught up in the end scene where Shirley gives Stanley her manuscript. He calls it a masterpiece, and then they dance together. Like, that act somehow discredits Shirley. Shirley is a strong, woke feminist, but she's also human, and it doesn't overwrite her to see her cave in and enjoy the only role that she can as a wife her husband finds intelligent and stimulating. Because like I said, she doesn't really have many other options. This scene is not of two master manipulators sitting down after a long day, although technically, yeah, it is. Stanley ruined Fred's chances at a career because he has some godly need to exude masculine dominance. He couldn't stand to have a younger, dumber man usurp his position of power at the university. As much as you can say Shirley used Rosie in a similar way to get her writing, to enforce her own status as a genius writer by destroying her muse, it was way more than that. Shirley was manipulative, but in a pathetic sort of way. Shirley was terribly lonely, and turned Rosie into someone closer to her, a friend. Shirley is allowed to dance with her shithead husband and have a moment of acceptance in what is ultimately a very sad existence, because sometimes fighting a losing battle, it just gets too tiring. And you can't blame her for leaving Rosie to bear the burden of opposing women's shitty status, because she's fought long enough. Let her have it. Let her have her day off. Leave Shirley alone. To me, I take the ending as something bittersweet, more like a torch being passed on from Shirley to Rosie. And I think it's hard for the reviewer that made that statement about Shirley to understand, because being feminist isn't the same as feeling like a woman. There are a lot of scenes in Shirley where I slouched over and said, this is sad, like deeply sad, because it reverberates even today in our society, and you can feel it low-key, but not everyone experiences it. This movie was drowned in feminist undertones. And if it's not already in you as something that you feel when you see something that can be minutely described as sexist rather than have to think about it, it doesn't come off as especially moving. And it's not ingrained in all of us, but it is in some of us, and I think that's why Shirley hit so deep. Where my boyfriend looked at Shirley with more of a disconnected view of a bad person, I forgave her flaws because I have too felt a deep, bitter rage for my lack of options in life because of a man. It turned me into a bad person too. And in Shirley's position, I would probably end up being exactly the same kind of person, honestly. And for that reviewer to sit there and to question if the movie was saying anything at all, when it was saying so many things about being a woman, I can safely say that he didn't get it because he just isn't one. I'm not a feminist bent on taking down the patriarchy, usually, and I know that this review will kind of come off that way, but I definitely feel like there's a lens some people don't have to fully appreciate Shirley's character. It's a deep movie, and if you can get to all of the layers and reasons why characters act the way they do, then you'll probably love it. I give Shirley a 4.5 out of 5 on our rating system, which means it was great. So that was my review and interpretation of the movie Shirley. If you like my content, please like, subscribe, or leave me a comment about what you think Shirley was about, or, you know, literally anything. And if you want to support my content, I have my Patreon and my Buy Me a Coffee in the links below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.